a corset pattern or a bustier with cups, a basic bodice block, a sleeve block, and a skirt pattern, the back and the front. Now the fabrics. This pattern fabric is 2 yards. The plain black is 1 yard. The soft 2 1 yard, and the lining 2 yards. And then interfacing, the soft type, and medium wording, medium in thickness, and a zipper. So I went ahead to cut, and I added allowances to the sides, and then I slanted so that it would be easy to fold. I added allowance also to the back, so I did 1 inch on the side. You can do 1.5 and then 2 inches on the hemline, and at the top I did 1/2 inch. Now on the cuffs I added 1/2 inch all round, and I cut 2 pieces for the main fabric, the lining, and the wording. So I actually placed the 3 of them at once and cut. It's easier that way, or it makes it faster. The same thing also for the second cup, 1/2 inch all round, 2 pieces of the main fabric, the lining, and the wording. Now on the center front, I cut on fold. I placed the pattern like so, and then added 1/2 inch at the top, the side, and the lower part. You can also cut this. You can open the center if you want and add a 1/2 inch allowance for joining. I also cut the lining and interfacing for it. Now this is the side. I cut on fold as well, 2 pieces, and then added a 1/2 inch allowance all round as well. And then I cut the lining, the interfacing for it. I also cut lining for it. Now on the top of the cup, I added 1/2 inch all round as well, and I cut 2 pieces for the main fabric, 2 pieces the lining, and also 2 pieces of wording. This is the yoke. I also added allowances, 1/2 inch to the side, the lower part, and the neck width is 4 inches and the depth is 4 as well. I cut on fold, 1 inch to the side, the lower part 1/2 inch, the zip side 1 inch, and the armhole 1/2 inch. The neck width is 4 inches by 2.5. Sleeve, I did 2 inches on the hemline, 1 inch on the side, and then slanted it, and then, so it can be easy to fold. And then I did 1/2 inch at the top sleeve head. Now after ironing the wording, I trimmed the edge round so that when we sew it, it won't form bulge. And then I ironed the interfacing to the center front, the sides, and the back. Now for the cup, make sure that 1, 2, 3 align together. Now this is 2 and 3, and then I sew along that part and notch it, and then open, and then I top stitch, and then attach 1 to it. The 1 is the top one. Line it properly, and then sew with 1/2 inch allowance, and open, and then top stitch as well. Now this is how you're going to iron it. Get a round object or whatever you use to iron your cup, and iron like so. By the way, this iron is not plugged, this is just illustration. Open it and iron, and make sure that part is notched properly, and then turn and iron as well. Now here you place the fabric. This is to avoid iron stains. Iron like so, and then iron the lower part as well. So I went ahead also to hold the dart on the back bodice. Now here is how you're going to fix the cup. make sure that they align the notched parts. So we're also going to sew it with 1/2 inch allowance all round, and after sewing that part, we'll also notch. Every round part you sew, you notch. So after sewing, this is how it's looking. Now anytime you're sewing, make sure that the middle parts, they align, the seam align, and even the lower part and the sides as well. Now we attach the yoke. Now for the yoke, I cut 3 pieces and then use one to turn the neck. And after turning the neck, I trimmed so it will look neat. So now we attach the yoke to the bodice. And make sure you get the mid parts or the midpoint and attach to the bodice as well. So you can just go ahead and sew it like before attaching the lining, but I'll just go ahead and fix the lining. And I'm going to sew with 1/2 inch allowance. Now after sewing, this is what it's looking like. I stopped the yoke. I placed the yoke at the top of the cup, and also I notched all round. After notching, I turned and then I gave a top stitch. At this point, you can go ahead to give it a press so it will set properly. Now for the back bodice, I used the lining to sew the neck, 1/2 inch allowance, and then I gave space for the zipper. Now we're going to attach the front bodice to the back on the shoulder, as we're going to join the shoulder. This is how we're going to place it in between the lining, the yoke in between the lining and the back, the main fabric of the back bodice. So I'm going to join with 1/2 inch allowance. After joining the shoulder, and then I'll join the side. I'll first of all shape it. I'll shape the bust, the under bust, and the waist with the measurement that I'm working with. And this is the lining. I'll do the same thing to the main fabric. So after joining or shaping it, this is how it's looking. So the next thing now is the skirt. So I ironed an interfacing to the hemline of the skirt. And I also sewed the dart. Now for the back side, I also ironed and then sewed the dart as well. And then I took 7 inches down. I sewed a basting stitch 7 inches from the waist, and then did the main stitch also to the point of that pleat, and then another basting stitch to the hemline. So now I went back and then sewed the pleat 1/2 inch allowance, and then opened and then gave a notch on only one part. Now we're going to pin it. We'll pin it to the right. And by the way, for the pleat, I did a zigzag stitch and then I hem it just to fold it. Now we pin the pleat on the right side of the skirt. And then we're going to sew a slant stitch to the end of that pleat at the back. Now you can use a fabric pen if you have to mark. The thing is, you would feel it while sewing, so it's not difficult to get. Now after sewing that stitch, we'll now lose the basting stitch. After losing, this is how it's looking. So next we shape the skirt as well, both the lining and the main fabric. So after shaping, we fix to the top of the dress. Main fabric to main fabric, lining to lining. Make sure that the sides align. And we're going to sew with 1/2 inch allowance, or whatever allowance that you add. So after sewing, this is how it's looking. We're almost there. So the next thing is to fix the zipper. But before we do that, we're going to sew a basting stitch just to hold that, so tack that part. Then we'll fix our zip or zipper. So now after the basting stitch, I held the zip with a pin and then I'm going to tack like so. Tacking makes it easy to sew, that is to sew the zip or the zipper. Now after tacking, we're going to lose the basting stitch we made. Okay, now after losing the basting stitch, you open the zip and then sew the main stitch on the zip. Now as you're sewing your opening the zip, you sew and open until you're done. So we're done fixing the zip. Now the next thing to do now is to complete the lining. We sew the neck and then attach the lining on the main fabric along the zipper side. Make sure you sew the lining on the zip. So you continue to sew until you get to the end of the zipper and then stop and do the same for the other side. Now after sewing, this is how it's looking. So we attach these two together this way. We'll use 1 inch allowance to sew because that's the same allowance for the zip. So you're going to sew from this point to this point. That's where the zip ends. Now after sewing, this is how it's looking. And then I went ahead to stitch the hemline. Now this part I'm going to tack. I did the inner as well, inner lining as well. So the next thing to do is to fix the sleeve. I've actually gone ahead to fix one of the sleeves, so I'm going to show you how I fixed it. I hemmed the sleeve as well. and shape it. So you're going to notch the sleeve head. Now you get the side of the sleeve, the seam side, and attach to the seam side of the bodice. I hope I'm making sense. And then the shoulder you attach to the sleeve head and pin. And then go ahead to pin every other side. So after pinning, we're going to sew with 1/2 inch allowance all round, and we're done. So I'm going to use my serger to weave everywhere, even the inner part of the dress. And that's it, guys.